Talk Radio.
Vichiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye EGUA Da Medinde Ujirapo Kwesi Radnehem Pata Akan Akwamumana Maruka Etifimu Ojirapo. That means greetings all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is EGUA Marketplace Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Radnehem Pata Akan. Ojirapo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yedate, we thank you for tuning in once again. We are going to place links in the chat room to some of the information that we will be going over. If you have a question or a comment and you're in the chat room, you need to log in with your username. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one very quickly in Blog Talk, and then you can interact in the chat room. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, just hit the number 1, and then we can connect with you on the phone line. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just posting a couple of these links real quick. And what we want to do right now is making sure everything is straight. We're just making sure this message was sent out. Okay. All right, so we are in, this is our second week. So what we started was with the EGUA Marketplace Day, and for those who are new, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joada, Monday, we have Akanfo Nanasong, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion. So we deal with specifically the Akan expression of ancestral religion from an authentic perspective, talking about the culture, cosmology, the nature of the Abosom, forces in nature, the Nanano Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated in relationship to Nyamewa, Nyame, the Supreme Being, Nyonkupon, Nyonkunton, the Creator and Creatress, the various Abosom and so forth. So we deal with that from an authentic perspective. We are in the midst of a multi-part series on that particular show on the Akradin Bosom. The Abosom, or the deities, the spirit forces in creation that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern the 7-day week, the Akan 7-day week. So we did 7 parts so far. We'll be doing part 8 next week. The names that we have, the Akradin, the soul names that Akan people have, like Kwesi and Akosua, or Kojo and Ajua, Kwabena, Abena, Kweku, Akua, Yao, Ya, Aba, Kwao, Afua, Kofi, Kwame, or Kwamena, and Kwame, and Ama, or Amemenewa, and their variations. These various soul names are associated with the Abosom, the forces in nature, the deities, the goddesses and gods that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern our 7-day week. We're in the midst of that series. Part 8 will be next week. We talked about Akua, the Abosom Akua, this week, who is the female Abosom animating the planet Aku, which they call Mercury. Akua is a divine courieress. She's called Nebet Het in ancient Kemet. She's called Akberu, the wife of Eshu in the Yoruba tradition, and Koni Koni, the wife of Legba and Vodun. So we talked about her this week on the show, and we're going to continue with that series, 11-part series. So we go through all of the 11 Abosom who govern the 7 days of the week. So that's the kind of information we deal with on Monday. Joda, Akanfo Nanasom Da. On Binada, which is Tuesday, we have Ojira, which means purification, where we deal with Nanasom, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral religion in general, from a purified perspective once again, exposing misinformation, teaching the proper cosmology undergirding our ancestral religious practices, and how they relate to every aspect of our lives, every moment of every day, from ancient culture, ancient cosmology, how it manifests in our lives at every moment, in every aspect, culture, ancestral religion, nation building, restoration, and so forth. And then, of course, we have EGUA Marketplace Day, where we talk about businesses, products, services, individuals who are owners of organizations, businesses, institutions, and so forth, talking about their services, how we serve the community in a positive fashion, and also how we maintain our ancestral values in the process of providing products, services to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. What we are in the midst of with regard to Marketplace Day, we started the AKOM, and we published the OKOM Economic Development Model. And we published that a couple of weeks ago. We are on week number 2 of this movement, and AKOM means hunger. It also means possession in the Akan language, and also in the language of ancient Kanat and Kemet, Nubia and Egypt. And we call this economic development model and movement AKOM. And just to read from the page on the website, the term AKOM is comprised of the terms ka, which means go, and mu, meaning within. So komu or kom, AKOM means to go within. This references hunger, desire for the going within or consumption of food and medicine for sustenance, healing, building, and protection, as well as the spirit going within or possessing the individual for spiritual sustenance, healing, building, and protection. In a natural sense, AKOM references our innate inclination to possess that which we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. This constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of Amenti, which is nation building, restoration for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, as delineated within AKOMU Mine, Amarukai Sifimu, the AKOMU Nation of North America. So when we talk about the constellation of 7 needs, sustaining ourselves, healing ourselves, protecting ourselves, developing ourselves, governing ourselves, sheltering ourselves, and clothing ourselves, is rooted in those 7 principal values of nation building, delineated in our publication, Obedima, Afurakani Manhood, and other publications as well. So all the businesses, products, services, organizations that we promote, and individuals coming onto the show talking about their products and services reference and represent one or more of these 7 principal values of nation building. So we're promoting businesses, organizations, and so forth, institutions that contribute to that in a harmonious fashion rooted in ancestral culture. So we published the model, and that's the basis, the foundation of the model, and then the strategy embedded within the model is AKOM. We're talking about hunger, but we also starve the beast and feed the pride. So we starve the beast. The whites and their offspring, we waste money on a weekly basis with the whites and their offspring. We can make an assessment on a weekly basis. We can make an assessment of where have we wasted funds, where have we wasted. There's times when we spend $1 here or $2 here. We may spend some money on a lunch break at Chipotle or McDonald's or some Chinese food restaurant or something like that. Instead of giving those funds to the whites and their offspring, we can starve that beast and reallocate those funds to an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business. So what we're doing is we're targeting one business per week for the next 52 weeks. And hold on one second, I want to make sure the chat room is working properly. But we're targeting one business per week for the next 52 weeks for capital infusion. So if you make that assessment on a weekly basis, see where you have wasted some funds. We're not talking about the generation of additional revenue. We're talking about Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people making an assessment of where you have wasted some funds on some products or services with a white business, white Europeans, white Asians, white Hindus, white Arabs, Hispanics, whoever it is, white pseudo-Native Americans, wherever it is, making that assessment, seeing where you can extract those funds away from those white businesses, and then reallocating them to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business. Okay, so it looks like, and this happened with Blog Talk yesterday as well, it's something going on with the chat room itself. So we're rebooting the chat room. You might have to reboot or log out and log back in a couple of times because the Blog Talk system itself was having a problem, and every now and then they will have a problem across the entire website. So all of the radio station channels will have a issue with, logging in, logging out, and so forth. So you might have to, if you try to log in, you might have to log back out and log back in. And you can always, what you can do, if you're having a problem logging in, you can call and you can listen on the phone line if you would like to, 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. And you can log in that fashion, or you can listen in that fashion, because it looks like, yes, so it's doing the same thing it did last night, so there's an issue with the chat room. So it took about 10 minutes before it got right last night. You can call in the meantime if you can't log in, 657-383-0635. All right, so what we're doing is we're targeting one business per week for the next 52 weeks. You make that assessment, see where you have wasted some funds. You can easily waste $1 during the course of a day on some, a soft drink like Pepsi or Coke or something like that, or Arizona tea, or some other power drink or something like that, which is just high fructose corn syrup with some coloring, things like that. You can make that assessment, make that deliberative move to starve the beast and reallocate those funds. We target one business per week so that there can be a capital infusion from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, from the whites and their offspring businesses directly to ours. So you have a business, for example, the first business of the week was EGUA Health, owned by Dr. Afibi Adiro. She's a naturopath. She also sells dry herbs. She's a full practitioner. She's a primary care doctor. She's a doctor of naturopathy, but she approaches holistic health from an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit perspective, rooted in ancestral religion and culture. So she has EGUA Health. So last week, from February 1st through the 7th, we were targeting her business, and we asked individuals to starve the beast and feed that business. And when you do something like that, one person taking $5 away from, wasting it with a white business and transferring it and making a contribution through the donation page on Dr. Afibi's business, that's $5. But if 1,000 people do that, they're taking basically $5,000 away from the white economy and redistributing it directly to a black business. In this manner, she can expand her product offering, expand her services to the community, hire a black individual from the community, of course, to participate in the business and help the business expand. So it's always a win-win from our perspective, from the perspective of our people. So anytime we starve the beast as a collective and target those funds towards a specific business, that keeps our businesses afloat. So we're doing that. We have 14 businesses listed on our website, and we will put the link back up because the chat room, it looks like the chat room is back up now. Okay, so the OKOM, so first we're going to put the link out here, the OKOM page on the website, ojidapo.com/OKOM.html, the OKOM page. You can download the OKOM Economic Development Model and read the entire model. Of course, it's free. And then you can also watch the 2 videos, parts 1 and 2, where we went into the document, and we also had Dr. Arpivi on last week briefly talking about her business, but going into detail about the model and the cosmological foundation of the model and the strategy and so forth. So you can go to the page and get that information. All right, and let me put the other link in the chat room real quick. This is Dr. Kwesi link because we want to talk about that tonight as well. So we targeted that business last week. This week, February 8th through the 14th, is the business or the institution that we're supporting is our AKONGUASUA DAN, which is our institution. And we're going in order. The 14 businesses on the list. So first, this is Nkingo Health, Dr. Arpivi Adiro. This week, AKONGUASUA DAN, which is our institution. Next week will be hemisphere Productions, owned by Dr. EGUA. She came on the show and talked about her business a few weeks back, a couple of months back. After that will be African World Analysis, published by Kamal Makesi Tahuti. He's also the author of How to Make a Negro Christian. After that is Ntuma Pa and by Iya Naila Sankofa. So every business, week by week, you'll see the 14 businesses adding more businesses on a regular basis until we have the 52. So we're going step by step, week by week. So this week was AKONGUASUA DAN. AKONGUASUA is our institution. So our institution, all of the publications that we release are born of our institution. We have 16 books out. All 16 books you can find on our website, the Nhoma page on our website. And let me also put the link up for our website as well. The Nhoma page on the website, you can see all the 16 books. You can download all 16 of our books for free. Then we also have the soft cover versions of our books, which range between $8 and $11. And then any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off for larger orders. So all the publications that we release are born of our institution. We also have trainings that are free to the community, and we're going to get into the list of services that we offer and so forth. And of course, we have the broadcast, but then we also have the publishing arm and the entrepreneurship piece. We have the Nokwadepo entrepreneurship program where you can become distributors immediately. If you would like to distribute our soft cover publications to generate income for yourself, you purchase the books at a wholesale price, the distributor price, which is 30% off, and then you sell them retail to your friends, family, coworkers, people you work with or in groups and things like that, to generate additional income for yourself or just income in general for yourself, as well as at the same time you're empowering the community. So what we are doing is raising funds through our publications, as well as, in addition to that, we have a GoFundMe campaign where we're working to establish physical space in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area for our institution. We will be able to have the publishing arm based in the institution. We will do the broadcast in the institution. Of course, we will continue to publish. Well, our classes will be based in the institution where people can participate, but even those who do not live in the area, you will be able to participate through live streaming. Once we establish that center, we will be able to expand our services, expand the class offerings on a daily basis to the community. Of course, they will all be free, as well as the training. We have Oberima Afurakani Manhood training based on our book, Oberima Afurakani Manhood. So we have young men as well as older brothers coming out, going through those 7 principal values of manhood based on that book, which is basically a manual for Afurakani men. We go through the training. Everybody gets a free book in the process of that training. We also have the Patasa Tim, which is a curriculum, educational curriculum, 7-part series that we take people through. We also have Akumasa, which is substance abuse abstinence rooted in ancestral culture, and we have a method, a ritual method, the Kum method, to assist our people to overcome addictions to alcohol, marijuana, other drugs, and so forth. And people have been able to effectively overcome those addictions and maintain their sobriety, maintain themselves for years from that point on. So we have that training as well. We have, and just so people understand, even though we have a training dealing with that where we teach that, but then with regard to the ritual method, you don't have to come to a training for that. You can go to the website, look at that information, send us an email, and we can send you the ritual aspect of the information. So all you have to do is email us directly. So you don't have to come to a training. The training is more so to give people a certain kind of background on the information, and also it's a way, in another way, for people to generate income for themselves, because it's a means by which you can learn about how to infuse culture when you're teaching drug prevention. So if you're someone who teaches drug prevention, or you're a human services agent, if you're a caseworker, social worker, a therapist, or somebody who works in drug prevention or other kinds of groups and things like that, there are ways to teach substance abuse abstinence from a cultural basis. And we teach that training so people can go out and do that training with the people they work with, and they can even generate funds doing that, because people are always looking for different innovative ways to get to our youth as well as our adults, people who are so-called at risk, as well as adults who are, going through a number of different things, whether they're in the mental health community, or if they're in and out of incarceration because of drug use or possession or things like that. They're trying to lower the recidivism rate. There are different groups that people take part of, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes because of mandated by the courts that they have to participate in certain groups. The people have these strategies learned by the Whites in Alice Spring, trained in these and certified in these little strategies that don't really assist our people. When they find something that actually reaches our people, then they bring people on to teach those things. So this particular training people use as a component of their arsenal to help, raise our people up. So, but as far as the ritual method, you simply can contact us for that. So, but these various trainings we will have at the center once we establish the center, as well as the publishing arm and employment opportunities as well with regard to the publishing, because we print all of our books on our own printers in-house and in color. We do not contract that out to a third party. So as we expand, we open up the center, we'll be able to, of course, have more publications being printed and so forth, and we'll have employment opportunities for those who will be doing some of the printing, the shipping, and everything else dealing with the mechanics of producing these publications. So, and then the entrepreneurship piece is also part of that. That is already going on, the Noquadifo Entrepreneurship Program, Distributor Program. So if you would like to be a distributor, simply send us an email. You can go to the Homa page on our website, the publications page, and you'll see the short video that we have dealing with being a distributor, Noquadifo, and then we have a distributor information document laying out the wholesale prices and everything you need to know, and you simply place the order at the wholesale price, and in the meantime, you can study some of the information while you're awaiting your shipment, and then you can move forward. So these are the different things that will be happening once we establish the physical space for the center. So this week, we're asking individuals to support the AKONGUASUA DAN, AKONGUASUA institution, establishing, the fund for that institution. So when you look on the AKONGUASUA page, you'll see all of the products and services that we will have at the center. You'll see the links to all of the pages for each one. And then you'll see the GoFundMe page. So if you would like to support what we are doing, you can go to the GoFundMe page. You can make a contribution there, or you can go to our Homa page, the publications page, and you can make a purchase, or any purchase of $15 or more. You will receive one or more of our books, and any donation of $15 or more on the GoFundMe campaign, you will receive one or more of our books. Just email us, and make sure you email us and let us know which of the books you would like to receive. So And we're going to revisit some of that as we go through the piece. One thing, so that's what we're doing with regard to once a week, one business per week for the next 52 weeks. By the end of that 52-week period, we will have tangibly and demonstrably supported 52 Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, educational institutions, home schools, independent schools, healing centers, a number of different things, all dealing with nation building, participating or contributing to the nation building process. So it's not just people talking about, yes, we need to support Black businesses. We are targeting businesses on a weekly basis, tangibly making sure that they can stay open so that they can expand, their services and serve the community. So we're actually, moving forward. What we have done, in addition to publishing the model and releasing those 2 videos, we also published an OKOM page on Facebook. So when you go to our Facebook page, or you just go to Facebook in general, OKOM, Economic Development Models. OKOM, Economic Development Model, there's a page. You can like that page, and then, of course, please share it and invite your contacts, your friends on your friends list to the page. The more people that participate, the more people who can starve the beast and feed the prize, starve the white pseudo, businesses, take money from them and reallocate them to these different businesses on a weekly basis. If thousands of people participate, then that's thousands of dollars of capital infusion for each one of these 52 businesses. We have a balanced mix of male-owned businesses and female-owned businesses, as well as family-owned businesses, organizations, and institutions. So we're going to be, as you look through the list, you will see that. On the page, you will not only see, on the OKOM page on our website, you will not only be able to download the model, download the 2 videos, which go into detail about the model, but you'll see all of the links to the websites of the various businesses, as well as the links to the interviews that we did with each one of the business owners, where they sat with us for a couple of hours on the EGUA Marketplace show and talked about their businesses, their services, their products, and so forth, and their philosophy behind serving the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community rooted in our ancestral culture through the agency of their businesses or their organization. So you'll be able to get detailed information and be able to basically learn directly from the source what's going on with their business, and then you can go directly to their page and you can make your contribution. So that's what we're doing, and we're going to be updating the community on a regular basis. One thing we did want to touch on tonight, today is Awuku Da, which is Wednesday, but in our Akan culture, every 6th Wednesday is a special Awuku Da, or a special Wednesday, called Awuku Adai, which is an ancestral observance. So we have a page, Akwesi Adai and Awuku Adai. I'll put the link in the chat room once again, now that the chat room is back up, so you can see that. And tonight is actually Awuku Adai. Every 6th Wednesday, Awuku Da is Awuku Adai. And then in the midst of that cycle, of course, there's the Akwesi Adai every 6th Sunday. So the last Akwesi Adai was January 20th, or no, it was January 18th. And then 6 weeks after that is March 1st. That's the next Akwesi Adai. That's the major Adai. And then Awuku Adai is the little Adai, so to speak, in between the major cycle. So the previous Awuku Adai was December 31st, and then tonight is Awuku Adai. So there's a relationship here to what we're talking about, so we're going to read quickly about what Awuku Adai is and how it relates to what we're doing on EGUA Marketplace Day. So Akan people utilize a calendar system which is comprised of 9 cycles of 42 days. The 42-day cycles are called Adadria 9. Within each And Ada means day. Dria, what Edu means 10, and Anai means 4. So days, the day of 10, 4, 10 times 4, 40 days, and so forth. So within each of the 9 Ada, Dria 9, or 42-day cycles are 2 days which many Akanfo recognize as sacred to the Nananom Nsamanfo, the honored ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the goddesses and gods, the divine spirit forces of nature. These 2 days have the suffix Adai attached to them. Akwesi Adai, which is the Sunday Adai, also called Awusi Adai, and Awuku Adai, which is the Wednesday Adai. Adai is a term meaning to sleep or a resting period. Akwesi Adai and Awuku Adai are points within the 42-day cycle, the Adadrianan cycle, where time is ritually suspended. We take a quote-unquote rest from the physical world and focus our consciousness and energy in the ancestral realm that we may be nourished and regenerated therefrom. When we quote-unquote awaken from our spiritual rest, we are refreshed and retooled to carry out our Nkrabeya, divine function in creation. Food offerings are given to the Nananom Nsamanfo at the Nkombre, the shrine. Other rituals are performed on these sacred days, all of which function to recommit us to the divinely ordered guidance regularly transmitted to us by the Nananom Nsamanfo. The various means by which Akanfo observe Akwesi Adai and Awuku Adai is based on the relationship we have cultivated with our Nananom Nsamanfo and the Abosom connected to us, the ancestresses and ancestors and the deities connected to us. We have a list of the various dates for Awuku Adai and Akwesi Adai on this particular page. Of course, these are ancestral observances. Of course, no non-Afurakani, non-Afuraitkaitnit people can participate in any ancestral observance or ritual practice associated with our people in authentic ancestral religion. And of course, we mentioned that on the page. So this is time for taking a rest, basically a time for regeneration, a time for rejuvenation. We look over the past 6 weeks, past 42 days, see the different lessons learned, the guidance we were given in the past 42 days from the Nananom Nsamanfo and the Abosom. Recall the lessons that we learned, and evoke them and invoke them for a new beginning to move forward in the next 42-day cycle. So we take that rest, go to the Nkombre, the ancestral shrine, give Afurakani offerings and so forth, and commune directly with them. Taking a rest, just like when you go to sleep, it's a resting period so you can rejuvenate for the next day. So these particular days are quote-unquote resting periods where we take time out, focus on the Nsamanfo in a communal fashion, and then move forward. Now, we talked about specifically the manner in which these practices are, practiced by different Akanfo is based on our relationship, based on our truthstory, the relationship we have cultivated with the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the forces in nature that are born with us, connected to our blood circles and so forth. And that's critical to us here in America. And it's not just with our Khan people, but all Afuraitkaitnit people who were forced, ancestors and ancestors were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Umusuo Ketie, the great perversity, the enslavement era, whether you find that you are Akan or Yoruba or Ebe or Igbo or Bambara or Basa or Fula or whatever group you're from, the manner in which, number one, your culture cannot be lost. The Abosom, the forces in nature that are assigned to you by the Supreme Being, assigned to your spirit by the Supreme Being, to dwell with you throughout the course of your life, they are assigned to you by the Supreme Being pre-incarnation, before you even enter into the womb. Your spirit goes before Nyame wa Nyame. They assign a force in nature to dwell in your head region. It becomes your Kra, your Okrawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, as we call it in Akan, called Ori Inu in the Yoruba tradition, and Ka and Kaet in ancient Kemet. That divinity dwelling in the head region directs you in harmony with divine order, directs your functioning in creation on a consistent basis. You are then ushered by your Nananom Nsamanfo, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, into an incarnation through one of your descendants so that you can come into the world and carry out that function. So you are assigned to an abosom pre-incarnation. Of course, your clan members, your ancestresses and ancestors are set, and they are in Asamando, the ancestral realm, and they are connected to you, and you are connected to them by blood and by spirit. There's a spirit genetic connection, and that happens pre-incarnation as well, and they usher you into a physical incarnation through one of your descendants. Since that is the case when you are born into the world, it does not matter that we've been stripped of language and culture and everything else, just by virtue of the fact that you're Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African, and you are alive. You have a Sum, a spirit, and you have a Kraba, a soul of divine consciousness, dwelling in the head region of your spirit. You have a direct connection to the Supreme Being, through the agency of your Krab, your spirit's brain, the spiritual force in your head region. You can communicate directly to the Supreme Being through the agency of your Krab. You can therefore connect with the various abosom that the Supreme Being directs to connect with you and communicate with you through the agency of your Krab. You can connect with your Nananom Nsamanfo who are connected to you by blood, who are assigned to you to walk with you throughout your life, assigned to you by Nyame wa Nyame. So you have a connection to your ancestresses and ancestors by blood and spirit. You have a connection to the forces in nature by blood and spirit who are born with you. So therefore, when you want to learn about the culture, even though it's been stripped on a surface level, you can connect with them spiritually, and they will give you the culture through OKOM, which is spirit possession, OKOM, spirit communication. And of course, that's related to OKOM, which is hunger, but also means possession. This is why the term AKOM means possession, but it also means spirit possession, as in somebody getting spiritually possessed. And then UNKOM means to communicate, and it still means to go within. Komu, go within. Komu or kom, to go within, the spirit going within, communicating, and so forth. So AKOM and UNKOM is spirit possession, spirit communication. As long as the abosom can possess us, they can communicate with us. And of course, in the Western Hemisphere, you see various forms of spirit possession happening in our community, whether it was on the plantations and allowing us and affording us and directing us to wage war against the white Sonaro Spring and bringing into enslavement. Because we were waging war, we still engage in ritual practices where the ancestresses and ancestors engage in UNKOM, spiritual communication. They show themselves to us, communicate with us in dreams. Clairvoyantly, people can see them sometimes, children as well as adults. Clairsentience, they can feel the Nsamanfo's presence in the room. Clairaudience, they can hear the spirits of the Nsamanfo communicating with them. All different forms of communication that they engage in, various forms of UNKOM, spiritual communication. So as long as we have that, we can restore our culture. Based on the way we cultivate our relationship with the Nsamanfo, then that determines the manner in which we approach not only OKOM Dai, various ancestral observances, as we have taken on new experiences and learned lessons here, learned who the enemy really is, the white Sonaro Spring, and how to interface and repel the enemy and so forth and maintain our integrity. We've learned different things since we've been here as a group. So we have all of the genetic material, information, and ancestry and trustery from Afuraitkai within us. But then in addition to that, we've had experiences since we've come here that we need to incorporate as part of our corpus of knowledge, knowing what to accept, what to reject, and detailed information about that. So we incorporate that. That's key to what we're talking about. We talk about OKOM Dai. Kwekuanati is the abosom, the male abosom that governs OKOM Dai, or Wednesday. And then Akua, also called Nebuchadnezzar Nature Commanders, the female abosom who governs that day. They govern spirit communication. Kwekuanati is the divine messenger of the Supreme Being. Wakua, is the female courieress. She carries the offerings that we give to the Nananom Nsamanfo and the abosom. She carries them in her little vessel in her little earthen vessel, her bowl, so to speak. From us, she carries the energy of those offerings to the Nsamafo, to the Abosom, provoking their energy and provoking a response so they communicate with us. Kwekuanasi or Awukuanasi carries our prayers, our supplications, our incantations as the divine messenger to the Nsamafo and the Abosom, and they carry their messages to us. So he's the communicative force, and she deals with the ritual force. He carries the messages, she carries the offering. So they work together in that fashion. And they both govern male and female force that governs the planet Aku, which governs Awukuda or Wednesday. And of course, since today is Wednesday, Awukuda, and a special Wednesday, Awukuadai, then the kind of communication and calm that we have is governed by these two forces. But again, we said we have new experiences, including new echiwadi or taboos, divine restrictions that we've developed since we've been in this part of Asase-Afua, of the Earth Mother. So we have to learn specific things that we need to do to cultivate that relationship with the Nsamafo that's unique to us, in addition to what we already have inherited from Afuraitkaitnit. We're going to read something that we didn't get a chance to go over it yesterday, but it turns out that it's probably more fitting to talk about it today since we're talking about the specific manner in which we need to operate as a group here, as a collective here. And this directly ties into the economic development model and the means by which we need to support our businesses here. So let me go to that piece. I'm going to put the link in the chat room. It is actually from our Afuraitkaitnit.ning.com site. You may not, if you're not part of the site, you wouldn't be able to see the entire document, but you can sign up for that site at any time. We have our own social media network, separate from Facebook, a private network that we own, we pay for, Afuraitkaitnit, Nanasom, Tontain, or Ancestry Religion network. So you can join that, you can create a profile, we post discussions, blogs, videos, and everything else. People interact, study ancestral culture and religion, studying the publications and everything else, interacting with other individuals who are engaged in the same process. So you can sign up for that at any time. Those who are already part of that network, when you click on this link, you'll be able to see it. So, but before I get to that, give me 1 second real quick. Hold on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to read from this section, and it's talking about indigenization. And this directly impacts what we're talking about for Awukuadai, but not only that, for the way we approach our philosophical approach, rooted in our unique experiences right here in the Western Hemisphere. So there was a question on the forum, indigenous foods and herbs for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, and one of the members asked, I've been researching Orisha herbs for a long time and have found information by Santeria or Lukumi practitioners, thus the names are in Spanish, and the herbs have been adapted to the herbs that are in those areas. Because of this, I have a twofold question. Number one, in rejecting these herbs, do we seek to get herbs from home, talking about Afuraka, Afuraikai, or two, can we adapt by translating Afurakani herbs to ones that carry the same energy but are found where we stand right here? So this was our response to that question. So should we reject those herbs, seek to get the herbs from Afuraka, Afuraikai, or can we adapt by translating Afurakani herbs to ones that carry the same energy but are found where we stand? So this is our response, and then we're going to get into detail about this response. So what we say is we can do both. We should primarily be focused on what can be derived from Nana Asase-Afua, the Earth Mother, where we are, this region of Asase-Afua, this part of the hemisphere. We should never make ourselves dependent on having to ship herbs or other products from thousands of miles away. We have survived and thrived, thriving in the sense that we have re-embraced our amamre, our culture, here for hundreds of years. We are living proof that we have the capacity to endure and overcome any obstacles. Your profile picture, she has a picture of Shewo and She, which means they tried to burn you, but you do not burn. It's an Adinkra symbol in our Khan culture, so I was saying her profile picture embodies that reality, that we are unburnable, indestructible. That's the nature of the spirit of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and our people here have proven that no matter what they have put us through, we are still indestructible and we are still developing. So, for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit in America, the only dependence we naturally have is an interdependence upon one another and a dependence upon our Nananom Nsamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the divinity. The Abosom never left us during the Musuo Ketsie, the great perversity or enslavement era. We carried them in our moja, in our blood. We continue to be Nkomre shrines for them. This includes Nana Asaseapo, the Earth Mother. She will provide us with everything we need. Moreover, we carry Echiwadie, which are taboos in our Khan culture. They call it Ewa in Yoruba, taboos, whether they're dietary, social, etc. We carry them, these Echiwadie, these taboos that we have inherited via our Abusia, our ancestral clans, in Afuraikai. However, we have developed new Echiwadie taboos in addition to the inherited ones since we have been here. Some of these Echiwadie, these taboos, are not carried by our relatives on the continent because they were not exposed to this physical environment, nor were they exposed to this social environment. Such exposure called for additional protocols and prohibitions that our Okrawa, our souls, Inu, would reveal to us, and which the Abosom and Nananom and Samapo would confirm. There is also the question of blood mixing amongst Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans here from different ethnic groups during the enslavement era, and what ritual approaches we need to take to harmonize with those Nsamanfo from other groups who are now part of our families. This is particularly important when we have children, as they have moja, or blood, connected to both sides. Now, we say that while we incarnate from one particular group, the blood may be mixed, but the soul is not. As we say in our Kwamumai, Tumi Fra Moja, so Tumi Fra. You can mix blood, but you cannot mix the soul. Now, we have blood ties to other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit groups that we have mixed with. These ties should be strengthened and brought into balance for the good of the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people as a collective. That's like a true Pan-Africanism while never denying our direct incarnation-wise blood circle. And what we mean by that is it doesn't matter what happened with regard to blood mixture. If you were forced into the Western Hemisphere, if you are a Khan person and you were forced to breed with somebody else who was enslaved and they were Igbo, then the Akan person, the Akan male, for example, and the Igbo female were forced to breed and they had a child. Blood-wise, the child is half Akan and half Igbo. But the spirit that entered the womb, it is either one of the Akan ancestors or ancestresses, an Akan ancestral spirit that lived as an Akan person in a previous lifetime in the region where the Akan people live in Ghana or Ivory Coast. If that is an Akan spirit that is returned, their physical body may have the DNA of an Igbo mother and DNA of an Akan father, but is an Akan spirit that has returned. The blood is mixed, but the Okra is not, and the Sumsum, the spirit is not. If the spirit is one of the Igbo ancestral spirits, that spirit will enter the womb. They will have the DNA of the Igbo mother and the Akan father, but that spirit is an Igbo spirit still connected to an Igbo blood circle, connected to ancestral divinities and so forth, associated with the Igbo people that was associated with that spirit before they even got into the womb. So even though the blood is mixed, we can strengthen our bonds based on the blood that we have mixed with one another, then that creates fusion, and there's a true Afuraitkaitnit or Pan-African, consciousness that comes out of that. With regard to actual identity, however, we have to determine the provenance of the spirit. What side of the family does it come from? We can learn that directly from the cry of the spirit, him or herself. We can learn that from the abosom. We can learn that from the nananum and samampo. And depending on what side of the family that spirit came from, we will know what name the child should have, what kind of ritual practices they should engage in, and everything else. So that's why we said that. Then we say there's also the reality of indigenization. Only Afuraitkaitnit can be indigenous anywhere in the world. And then we have a webcast dealing with that. We are the only people to be created by Nyamewa, Nyame, the great mother and the great father, Amenet, and Amen in nature command. And the first people to populate the various parts of the world. Indigenization, if one wants to use that term properly, is a physical and spiritual process. When we migrate to an area and live there for a while, we are not indigenous because we were the first to live there. Indigenization in the true sense only occurs and there are 2 points that we deal with. So the key here is that when the whites and offspring use the term indigenous, all they mean is the first people who got to a landmass, they lived there for a while. They'll give some arbitrary number of years. If they've been there for a few hundred years or a few thousand years, and they'll say, these are the indigenous people of the land. That has no basis in reality. So we have to properly define what does it mean to be indigenized to a land. And why is it that only Afuraitkaitnit people can be indigenized to a land? And when we understand that, then that also ties in, that has to do specifically with identity, but it also ties into the way we move as a collective in this region with our own peculiar experiences. We have inherited everything that our relatives on the continent have, DNA-wise and spiritual-wise, with regard to trucery, because we were part of those civilizations. But then when we were forced over here, we not only had that previous trucery in our blood, but then we also have the experiences that we've gathered since we've lived in this region of Asase Afua, the Earth Mother. So we have to incorporate those experiences, ritualize the value of those experiences as well. So we have to understand the proper definition of indigenization, which the whites and offspring do not have. So indigenization, in the true sense, only occurs when we, number one, consume the plant life, mineral life, etc. of the region, including some with the animal life as well. The nutrients of the food and the new environment comprise a portion of the makeup of our newly developed cells, including sperm and ovum. So we're in a new environment. We're eating plant life, vegetables and minerals and so forth, wild game, natural game in the area and so forth that we never had before. And what we consume from this region of Asase Afua, of the Earth Mother, goes into our bodies and goes into the development and fashioning of all of our cells, including newly developed cells, including sperm and ovum, which of course we will pass on to our future progeny. Number two, someone becomes possessed by the local abosom of the region, rivers, mountains, etc. This infusion of energy, Tumi, Ashe, transforms their cells, including sperm and ovum. Such an individual then has children whose energy now resonates at the frequency of the abosom of the region. These children are the first-born indigenous people of the land. Everyone else is just visiting or settlers. Over time, those who are truly indigenous mix with others in the population, and you have over generations an indigenous group. Because now once the abosom possesses an individual, the energy moving through the individual's body transforms the cells of the body. Now, previously, when the abosom possessed our people, we're in Afuraitkaitnit, that already happened. So our cells are resonating at the frequency of these forces in creation. That's already going on. And we've had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren for thousands of years, millions of years. But then some of our people migrate over here or are forced to migrate over here during enslavement. We began to consume the plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth of this region. It gets into our cells, and we begin to harmonize on a certain frequency with the earth mother, the land, to a certain extent. But the key is when the abosome of the river, the abosome of the earth, the abosome of certain mountains, the abosome of this local region of Asase Afua possess our people for the first time. That energy gets inside the body of our people who are possessed and transforms the cells of the bodies of these individuals. And their cells begin to resonate at the frequency of this abosome. Their cells are transformed forever. When they have children, and that includes their sperm and ovum, of course, so when they have children, then their children are born with bodies. They create a zygote. The sperm and ovum from these kinds of individuals unite, and they create a zygote within which one of the ancestresses and ancestors enters the womb during reincarnation, takes up residence in that zygote, becomes an embryo, of course, and develops, but it's a specific physical body that's resonating at the frequency of the local abosome that possess parents of the individual. And so this child now is the firstborn indigenous to the land, the firstborn child that came out of the womb already resonating at the frequency of the local abosome of the region. And when such a child with those kinds of cells are resonating at that frequency, then mixes with other children and so forth over generations, now everybody has those kinds of cells that resonate at the frequency of this region of Asase Afua, the Earth Mother, as well as the local abosome of the region. Now these people are indigenized to the land. If that doesn't take place, then they're not indigenized to the land. They're just settlers. They're just people who are visiting. So we say such an individual, then as children we said they're the firstborn indigenous of the land. Everyone else is just visiting or settlers. Over time, those who are truly indigenous mix with others in the population. You have over generations an indigenous group. It must be noted that no abosome, no Orisha, no Vodou, no Arusi, no Ntoru, Ntorotu, misnomer, Netoru, Netotu, no forces of nature, no deities possess non-Afurakani, non-Afuraitkaitnit, meaning non-Africans, non-blacks. Therefore, non-blacks will never become indigenous anywhere. This includes the migrant Asians, commonly called, quote-unquote, Native Americans. They are simply white Eurasians, Eastern Eurasians, migrating from Siberia and other places, invading this hemisphere. We were already here. They waged war against our people as well. They're just invaders. But they're not indigenous anywhere. They're not indigenous to this land. They're not indigenous to Asia. Because the only way you can be indigenous is if you can be possessed by the abosome of the land, and that force in nature transforms yourself. The forces in nature do not possess the whites and their offspring. Asians, Hindus, Arabs, Europeans, Americans, pseudo-Native Americans, and so forth, those are spirits of disorder, as we talked about last night. Without a cry, without a soul, a divine consciousness. So no divinities possess them. The only thing that possesses them is their own deceased, discarnate, criminal, white relatives. They're white, Asian, white, European ancestors and ancestresses who are spirits of disorder as well. But the forces in nature will not possess them. Therefore, they are not tied to the land because they cannot harmonize with the forces in nature that undergird the land. So therefore, they can never be indigenized anywhere. No matter how long they live somewhere, they will never be indigenized, ever. They will never have that divine link to the land and the spirits that animate the land. Now, some of us have been indigenized to different regions of America during slavery, rooted in the process laid out above. Yet many of us have not been. Many Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit who migrated from Mississippi to Chicago, for example, over the past 100 years, have not been indigenized to the Chicago region. They just live there and have settled there. Most of the food they eat, is not grown in the Chicago area. And many of them are not involved in any form of Nanasom, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religion, and therefore have not aligned themselves with Asase Afur, the Earth Mother's expression in that region, nor have they connected to the abosom of the Chicago River, Lake Michigan, etc. Such individuals would thus still be under the same Echiwadye or taboos that they carried from the region of Asase Afur, the Earth Mother, in the southern United States, the lands of Mississippi, if they had been indigenized there, or the Echiwadye that they carried over from Afuraitkaitnit. So in other words, just because we migrated, some of our people through the Great Migration, migrated from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, up the river, or down the river to Chicago and Detroit and so forth, and we've been living there for 100 years, something like that. That doesn't mean you become indigenized to the land just because you moved and settled somewhere. Unless you are tied to the land through invoking the abosom or the abosom possessing your people, transforming the cells, and then those people with transformed cells have children, and those children are born with those transformed cells, linking them to the landmass and the forces of nature that animate that region. If that has not happened, then they are simply people who migrated from the south. They still have the same Echiwadye taboos associated with the forces in nature that they connected with in the southern part of the United States. And when they move up, quote unquote, up north, they don't become indigenized there, they're just living there. If they had never become indigenized to the southern United States, because they never went through that process, and they just were visiting, quote unquote, settlers because of forced migration, then the only Echiwadye or taboos that they have are ones that they already had in their blood circle from Afuraitkaitnit, which we all have. We just sometimes have additional ones since we've been here. So that's key. So some of us have indigenized ourselves by dealing with the local abosom of the region. Some of us have not. And either way, it's good either way. It's not negative on any side. If we need to indigenize and connect with local abosom in the region, we do that. If those abosom don't need to possess, then they don't possess. We already have abosoms that we are born with anyway. So this is why we say there are many Afuraitkaitnit who have been indigenized to the southern part of the United States during and since the Musuo Kessie. However, there are many who never have been. They simply communicate with their Nananom and Samanfo, ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, and the abosom whom they carried from Afuraitkaitnit in their blood, and learn of the Echiwadye, the taboos that they have, and move forward. These are considerations that Afuraitkaitnit in the Amenti, in the West, must recognize when making decisions about Nduru or Nduru medicine. We can benefit from Nduru, from Afuraitkaitnit, because we have in our moja, our blood and ancestral connection to Asase Afur's Tumi, the Earth Mother's power, as expressed in Afuraitkaitnit, because our bodies carry that, because that's where we come from. However, most of us need a more particularized Nduru or medicine, since some in our families have been indigenized here. Note that this is a reference to true indigenization as we laid out this process, which has absolutely nothing to do with the foolishness of Moorishism, which is total nonsense. And of course, we published our book, Moor Means Dead, to expose all of that idiocy that comes out of pseudo-Moorish thought. So, all right, so we went through that to talk about the indigenization process, because not only does it tie into the way we need to operate in a spiritual fashion, how we harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. That includes the abosom that govern us, the abosom in our environment. And if we indigenize ourselves to the environment by being possessed by certain abosom in the local environment, then we have different dietary, Echiwadye dietary taboos, social Echiwadye, and so forth. But then even just as a group, we move to a different region, we function and interact with one another, we've mixed with one another, Akan, Igbo, Basa, Ovambo, all these different groups coming together, sometimes being forced to mix during enslavement, and sometimes just mixing because we're connected with one another. now we have, as a collective, we have another collective identity, a subset of our larger collective identity. As Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, that is our collective identity. And we, of course, we published our book, Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, proving it comes directly from our ancient languages, and we show in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, the term Afurakani, proving that it not only comes from our languages, but it also references the first land that was forced up above the surface of the primordial water of earth by Ra and Ra'et. That first landmass is the divine land, and that is Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit. Ka means raised land. Ka'et is the feminine aspect of that. Ka also means soul or divine consciousness. Ra is the creator, Ra'et is the creatress. They are the divine living energy animating all created entities, divinely created entities. They are the great Ba and great Ba'et, the great divine living spirit. So Ra is the spirit, male, the great divine spirit, great ancestral spirit, creator, creatress of the universe. Ra'et is the creatress. So you have Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. Ka and Ka'et, the soul, the divine consciousness. Afu means flesh. It also means house or place of residence. Afura is a title of Ra when Ra is moving through matter, when the divine living spirit is moving through an animating matter, then Ra is called Afu Ra. When Ra'et is moving in animating matter, she's called Afu Ra'et. So Afuraka is the Ka, the land of Afura. We are Afurakani people because the Ka, the land or the physical matter, the flesh, the melanin and so forth is within us. Then Ka also means soul or divine consciousness. Afu means flesh, Ra, divine living energy, Ka, the soul. Afu, flesh, Ra'et, the creatress, the divine living energy, the spirit, and Ka'et, the soul. Flesh, spirit, and soul. Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit. That is our collective identity. Then we have a subset of that collective identity, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Amenti in the west, the place of the setting sun. So there's a different energy in this region. The energy of Asase Afua in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean is slightly different than it is on the continent of Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit in the Eastern Hemisphere and so forth. So we are operating on this landmass, interfacing with Asase Afua, our Earth Mother, as well as Asase Ya, the other Earth Mother divinity, and then the Abosom, the local Abosom in this region. So that affects the way we move, the way we operate, and our collective identity. So we are a subset of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We have a subset of that collective identity. That's Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnit in the west, and therefore the way we establish ourselves, the way we engage in ritual practice, our ritual songs, ritual dances, modes of purification, healing, dealing with herbs and so forth, is going to be slightly different than it was on the continent. It's going to be very similar, but it's going to be different based on our relationship that has been cultivated with the Nanonoma Samafo here and the Abosom that reside here. That includes the way we engage one another with regard to trade and commerce and every aspect of Amain Setsu or nation building. That includes what we're talking about with regard to OKOM, hunger, possession, but the economic development model of starving this beast, reallocating those funds, and supporting our own businesses. We have experiences here. We talked about previous webcasts. We have over $1 trillion of purchasing power. But what needs to be understood is the reason why we're not harnessing that is because of being brainwashed. We have to learn the lessons of what happens when you leave your culture and suppress your own culture, embrace self-destructive culture, and try to live that and engage in self-destructive activity and things that did not support your own interests and actually support the oppressor. Once you recognize what's going on because you awaken and realign with your own your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, realign with your insamanfo, then you begin to make different kinds of decisions that are constructive and productive as opposed to self-destructive and supporting of the enemy. Once we recognize our collective function here and who our collective enemy is, which of course is all of the white Tenor offspring who exist whoever existed and whoever will exist until we make them extinct, then our decisions automatically change. Then we begin to we're naturally inclined towards starving the beast, taking those funds away from whites and offspring and reallocating them to these Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, institutions, and so forth. So, see, we have a call online. So I'm going to go through the chat room real quick, make sure we didn't miss anything there. Okay. Okay, Michio, number 9854. You had a question or a comment on the phone line?
Yes, I have a question. How do we make sure that they don't come back, the whites and their offspring, spiritually? You say that we have to make sure that they go extinct. I mean, how do we make sure spiritually that they stay where they are, or, I mean, how do we do that?
Now, do you mean with regard to incarnation through a blood circle of our people or something like that, or what do you mean exactly?
Right, like with the whites and their offspring, as far as making them extinct, don't they come back? Aren't they like reincarnated back? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how do we make sure that they don't come back through other people or whatever,
Okay, so what happens is there's two things that are going on. So number one, when you have people come back through their blood circle, that's how they reincarnate. They come back through their descendants. Now, on one hand, when you look at population numbers, population growth rate, for example, and Whites and Offspring put out studies with regard to the population growth rate around the world. Of course, they're going to skew the numbers and make it appear that, their condition is a little bit better than it really is. But even when they misinform, just if you look at the numbers as put forward by them now, Whites and Offspring are at a negative. So, for example, the Western Europeans, whether it's in America or in Europe, their growth rate is at a negative. There's more of them dying than are being born. So they are disappearing from the planet. The Western European, the Western Eurasian. So you have you have Eurasia, which is Europe and Asia, including the so-called Middle East and all of that. The Western Eurasian is the quote-unquote European. The Eastern Eurasian are the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans and everybody else. But they're all Eurasians. And then the so-called Arabs and Persians and so forth, Hindus and others, they are quote-unquote Middle East and then, Southern Asia and stuff like that, but they're all Eurasians, and they're all non-black. So if you look at the Western Eurasians, for example, whether it's white Americans, Canadians, people in the Western Hemisphere as well as Western Europe, their population growth rate is at a negative. They are disappearing from the planet. The Caucasian is they're less than 1/10 of the world population. Mm-hmm. And when you look at these population growth rates and these numbers and the articles that they publish and the councils that they have when they go around the world having international councils on population growth, it's an alarm. They talk about the browning of America and everything else. They publish little stories in the New York Times and other things talking about how brown America is becoming, and by the year 2050, they're going to be a minority. They're already the minority. Of course, they've been lying about that. They were never coming over here by the millions for hundreds of years, packed like sardines in boats and having 10 to 15 children on a regular basis. They were forcing us to do that, but they were never coming in those numbers, so they were never the majority population in the first place. They've always been the minority in North America. They've been lying about that. That's just a military tactic to make people believe that they're surrounding you, when in reality, if you were in a house and there were bullhorns all around the house saying, "Come out with your hands up," and there was 5 of you in a house that was strapped, and you think the house is surrounded by agents, you may come out. And then you find out it's one person with a bullhorn, and he has 5 other bullhorns around the house. They're all linked through an amplification device, and he's one person and doesn't have any weapons at all, and you'll come out with your hands up. So they have to make you believe that you're surrounded, and that will force you to engage in behavior that otherwise you wouldn't engage in. That's why believe that we are the minority, which we have never been. But even in that, there's an alarm with regard to the way they publish that information, trying to, give their women fertility drugs and tax breaks if they have more children and all this other nonsense. At the same time, flooding our communities with drugs, flooding our communities with genetically modified foods, forcing to the best of their capacity, dissexuality, homosexuality on the community, interracial coupling, all this other stuff to try to suppress our growth rate, our population growth rate, our birth rate, while trying to increase theirs. But they've been doing that for over 30 years, and they have not been able to increase their birth rate. So they're still at a negative. More of them are dying than are being born. At the same time, even though they've been fomenting wars in Afuraitkaitnit, starving our people there, starving our people here, created the crack cocaine epidemic, heroin, marijuana, alcohol, asthma, environmental racism, dumping toxins in our neighborhoods, and that leads to people being born with asthma and other degenerative diseases and defects and everything else. All the different things that they're doing, passing out condoms in schools, trying to talk about, we're going to reduce teenage pregnancy. What they're really talking about is trying to reduce pregnancy, period, amongst black people. Anything they can do, and of course all the abortion clinics all over, the continent and everywhere we are, anything they can do to slow down our birth rate, because black people have the highest birth rate on earth. And even though they're doing all of that, we still have the highest birth rate. For every one black person that dies, 3 more are born. So we're tripling like that. So if things were just left alone, then they would just disappear, just based on the fact that their birth rate is at a negative. More of them die than are being born every year, so every year there are less and less of them. Because they see that, they're trying to increase our death rate and decrease our birth rate, and they're never going to stop. They're going to continue to wage chemical and biological warfare against our people, as well as physical wars on the continent, as well as here with the police and everything else. So, of course, our response must be to wage war against them physically, chemical, biological, and on every level, defending ourselves against everything that they're doing. So we can't just sit back and say, well, the population is going to take care of itself. That would only be the case if they did not try to wage war against us in order to take our numbers down. So we have to do more than just that. So that's one thing. So, but it's still, no matter what they do, our people are fighting back, of course, and the more of our people get involved in ancestral culture, the more of our people will embrace Amenti or nation building, and part of that is the establishment of a military structure to defend ourselves and eradicate our enemies. So that's already moving in that direction, has been doing, been going in that direction. So it's just a conflict that's going to continue until we win out and we crush them. So when they no longer have any physical bodies to come through because, they're gone, the only bodies they would be able to come through is the ones that they engaged in interracial coupling with. So when we shut that pathway off, then they won't be able to come through even through that. We talked about last night, we talked about reincarnation and race last night, and we talked about that process of recognizing, even when people engage in interracial coupling, either the white spirit is coming into the womb of that biracial quote-unquote womb, or one of those white ancestral spirits coming through, or from the white side, white quote-unquote parent, or one of the black ones coming through from the black parent. But when you have children, when you're engaged in culture, you can repel negative entities, negative discarnate ancestral spirits from getting into the womb. You can do that with the whites and their offspring, of course. Of course, a person shouldn't be engaging in sexual activity with those criminals anyway for any reason at any time. But if a fool does do that, and these discarnate spirits come through, there's a way to block them from coming through. Once you embrace your culture, establish your ancestral shrine, and have a relationship with your Nsamanfo, they will repel them from coming through your blood circle. So we can do that, and we've always been able to do that. Just like you have people in your house, they will keep other people from trying to break into your house. Once they see you have a army of people in your house, they're not coming in, or they're going to get crushed and they won't be able to come in. The same thing is true spiritually. Your Nsamanfo is that first line of defense. When you have a relationship with them, they can help you repel certain kinds of ancestral spirits from entering into the womb, to reincarnate. So we've always had that process, even if we're trying to block somebody who in the family who was a child molester or something like that. We're not trying to allow that spirit to come back through the womb and reincarnate. Your Nsamanfo will block that kind of individual. And, of course, they'll block the whites in their offspring. So that can be done ritually to repel them. But then at the same time, on the physical side, no matter what they do and what they're trying to do, they're disappearing physically on a daily basis. Now, we need to accelerate that disappearance by confronting them directly. But they are, they're already on their way out. The only pathway they will have back into the world if we were engaged in interracial coupling, and then they start returning through these unions and creating these mulattoes and so forth and operating through those mulatto bodies, and then they will get back into what they've done in the past, always incest, greatly increasing the incidence of albinism, and then they'll replicate another population of white-skinned, light-haired, light-eyed individuals, spirits of disorder, all over again if we allowed that. But we have something for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, may I say for the call. And of course,
okay.
We appreciate the call. And of course, we talked about, we had 2 broadcasts on Blog Talk. One was called Race and Identity, and then we just did a broadcast last night, Debra Nesu, which means reincarnation and race. And we talked about this whole notion of miscegenation, who to accept, who to reject, meaning somebody engages in this perverse act of miscegenation, and some of these spirits enter. Talk about delineating which spirit came into the womb. Was it one of the whites in their offspring who came into that biracial body? Because if they did, that body of melanin will not automatically, magically create a cry for them, a soul for them. They're just a spirit of disorder masquerading as a light brown individual, like an Obama, a criminal operating through a light brown body that appears to be one of our people, but really is not. Still the same spirit of disorder. Or if the spirit came from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit side ancestral pool, then that spirit is still an Afurakani spirit or Afuraitkaitnit spirit with an Okrawa soul, the divine consciousness. They enter into the womb because of the foolish behavior of their descendant who engaged in interracial coupling or miscegenation with this cracker. Then they're going to be forced to come into the world in a lighter brown, weaker body. But they're still an Afurakani spirit or Afuraitkaitnit spirit. They're still one of our people. We talked about how miscegenation in every case is rape, whether it's a physical assault, and that's how the rape happened, or if it wasn't a physical assault, still a mental assault. No Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person listening to their Akra will ever connect with the whites in their offspring. You have to be brainwashed and mentally raped and forced into the false belief that it is okay or normal to embrace one of the whites in their offspring and engage in sexual activity with one of these perverse spirits of disorder. If you're in your right, normal state of mind, you naturally repel all of the whites in their offspring, living and deceased, young and old. Even when they're in the womb, before they even come out the womb, their spirits are still repulsive. So you can't even consider operating and connecting with them. You'll be going against nature, just like 2 magnets with the same polarities facing. If you try to force them together and leave them alone, they will repel without even touching. And it's the same with the whites and their offspring, all non-black, non-Afurakani, non-Afuraitkaitnit people. So when we understand that, anytime somebody goes beyond that natural order of things and then begins to embrace the whites and their offspring, it's because they've been mentally and spiritually raped, and their minds are being controlled by these perverse spirits of disorder. And that's the only reason that they can copulate with them. So any miscegenation is a rape. And because that happens, sometimes these perverse spirits of disorder even if the rape happened 5 or 6 generations ago during enslavement, sometimes these criminal white so-called slave masters who raped their blood into the family 5 generations ago, their little spirits are still hanging around. And if we don't repel them, they will try to influence our living relatives, even if they were the only one who got into the family. So they raped somebody in 1750, a great-grandmother in 1750, and the child was born biracial, but that biracial child was one of the Afurakani spirits that came through the family. That biracial child grew up in 1770 and married a black woman, and they had a child that was a little bit darker brown. That child grew up, married a black woman. They had another child. That child was darker brown, and by the time you get to today, looking at that family, you would never guess that 5, 6 generations ago, there was a perverse white spirit of disorder that raped the blood into the family, because you don't see any morphological features that look like a cracker. You don't see any straight hair. They have natural noses, lips, dark brown skin, naturally curled hair, and so forth, and they look normal. But then they do their genealogy, and they find there was a cracker who raped their blood into the family generations past. If they don't have a basic relationship with their Nsamafo, that criminal white spirit will try to influence the individuals from the earthbound spirit realm. They'll try to invade their dreams, tell them that they're Jesus, try to influence them to embrace white people, and any black person who's talking about African culture or hating the whites in Alice Springs, they will try to influence them to say, no, you want to reject that person, stay away from that person. Anybody who talks about hate, stay away. They're still trying to control our people from the other side. But when we embrace divine order, we repel those perverse spirits instantaneously and permanently. So we talked about that in detail last night. All right. Okay, so we're just going through this information. So all of that is tied into that whole notion of indigenization, the way we must operate here, the way we must function here based on our knowledge of our collective identity and the peculiarities of our experiences here as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Amenti, in the West, and how we have bonded with one another and how we have survived and how we need to move forward. All these things contribute to the method in which we established this OKOM economic development model. So that whole strategy of starving the beast, first gaining a knowledge of who we are as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We start off with that understanding of that philosophy in the OKOM economic development model. Then we talk about, Amenti, the constellation of 7 needs that are addressed through Amenti, and that constellation of 7 needs is our innate inclination to possess that which we need to sustain ourselves, methods of food production and preservation, heal ourselves, methods of curing disease, protecting ourselves, establishing a military structure, developing ourselves, institutionalizing our values, establishing institutions of training, to train in healing, train in agriculture, train in military science, train in governance, and so forth. Methods of sound systems of jurisprudence and governance. We need methods of creating shelter, engineering, and so forth on acquired land. And then we need to be able to clothe ourselves. So this constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of nation building and so forth. And once we understand that based on our perspective here, then we develop strategies that support those 7 needs. And this is what we do with the OKOM economic development model. So, as we said earlier, for the people who came in later, last week we're targeting 1 business per week for the next 52 weeks. A business organization, institution, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit. Last week was the first week, and we asked everyone to support Nkingu Health, owned by Dr. Afivi Adiro, naturopathic doctor, and people began to make contributions to her website, to her business, and that way she's able to, expand her offerings to the community and so forth, eventually hire somebody in the community and continue to do the great work she's doing, healing, curing our people. This week is our institution, AKONGUASUA DAN. So we have our institution, and we'll just go through some information. We're going to put the link on the page. We'll put the link in the chat room real quick. And we'll just go through the products and the services that we will have at the institution, the physical space for the institution. We'll go through that list real quick. Okay, so that's the link, AKONGUASUA page on the OGIFO website. So again, we already have our institution. All of the books and publications and the teachings and everything that we have are born of our institution. AKONGUASUA, Akongua is an Akan term for when you often see what they call the Ashanti stools or chairs, the carved wooden stools that you see on the, in Ghana, you see people have them in different cultural shops and things like that. They're called EGUA or Idria, depending on the dialect. One of the scripted titles of them is Akongua, and so we have an image of one of those seats, ancestral seats. Suya means to learn, to study. So AKONGUASUA means learning, studying. Suya from the ancestral seat, Akongua. So this is the name of our institution. So everything that we do is born of learning from the Nananum Nsamanfo, being directed by them and the Aboson, and we direct it to physical, tangible proof of the things that they give us. We verify that information tangibly, and we publish it, whether it's through audio, video, written, and so forth, so that we can share that information with our people so that they can learn and they can investigate those things, verify them for themselves with regard to the research, but then they can also verify these ritual practices once they begin to engage their own Nsamanfo and their Abosom as well, and their Krawa as well. So for the institution, that method of engaging the forces in nature, the Nsamanfo, getting that information, then directing us to tangible proof of that information for verification, doing the investigation, then publishing, that whole method is born of the institution, and everything that we do is born of that process. What we typically do when we have classes and things like that, we have been in the D.C. area for, it'll be 6 years in March. We're from Chicago originally, so we would have our classes and everything in Chicago. We're in the D.C. region now. When we have classes and things like that, typically we have to rent out a space for that. So what we want to do is establish a permanent physical space in the D.C. region, the first of a number of physical spaces that will be in different parts of the country in your various regions, so people can have a place to go to study, go to these classes, get these trainings, employment opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities. It's an institution of learning, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. So this is what we're working on. So just to give you an example of what will be happening, there are 3 areas in the AKONGUASUA DAN. So DAN means sanctuary or building. So AKONGUASUA is the institution. The AKONGUASUA DAN is the center or the sanctuary or the building for AKONGUASUA. So there are 3 areas that will, the physical space will house the institution. We will address 3 areas. OKOM, which is ritual observances, healing. Adesuya, which is classes, trainings, workshops, broadcasting, lectures, as well as conferences and so forth on ancestral religion. And Homane Ajuma, which is publishing, book publishing, and distribution, employment, and entrepreneurship. So if you look on the AKONGUASUA page, we have those 3 sections laid out, and then we have links to the various pages on the website that address these sections. So the ritual and healing aspect of the institution, the OKOM aspect, we say we will hold all of our communal ritual observances at the AKONGUASUA DAN or the AKONGUASUA Center for the empowering and healing of the Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit community, Oman Nation, inclusive of, we'll have a Kwete Adai and a Wuku Adai, those ancestral observances there. We'll have the Apo Afashe, which is a 13-day observance in March around the equinox. And then we have Obrajira, our 7-day New Year celebration, which happens in September around the autumnal equinox. We'll have our Aboa Nkwa classes, which is ritual movement for health and wellness. We have our book, The Origin of the Term Yoga, and Karakasa, The Origin and Nature of the Chakra, where we have a ritual practice where we move our bodies in the forms of our chinebois, our animal totems, for stretching, toning, strengthening, balancing, offense, defense, and focus, and so forth. It's called AKONGUASUA. This is a ritual method of movement where we connect with our chinebois, animal totems, to realign ourselves physically, to strengthen ourselves, and so forth. That's something developed within AKONGU Mind, the AKONGU Nation in North America, and Fanti Mind, the Fanti Nation in North America. So we'll have classes with regard to that. Then the Adebisa piece, the divination piece. So that's the AKOM aspect of the institution. Then the Adesuya aspect of the institution, classes, trainings, workshops, lectures. So we will hold all classes, trainings, workshops, and broadcasts at the AKONGUASUA DAN, the center for the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Nation. That includes the trainings with classes dealing with Akanfo Nanasom, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion. We already have our broadcasts 3 days a week. We will be able to expand broadcasts because we have other subjects we want to deal with and other individuals who will also be participating as moderators for broadcasts as well. For example, the Guerrilla Scene website that we have, where we deal with ancestral hip-hop, ancestral spoken word, ancestral soul, and so forth. We promote those kinds of artists who use their craft to transmit ancestral values rooted in ancestral religion. We're going to have a show specifically for that. Those individuals will come on and talk about their work. You can support their work and talk about what messages they're trying to convey through their artistry and so forth. So we're going to have that as well. That's going to be another broadcast coming soon. And other broadcasts as well. Something dealing with just news in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, keeping us updated on everything that's going on. And eventually we'll have, people from different areas of the country as well as different parts of the world who can call in, and will be, people who are on the scene where things are actually happening, giving a proper analysis of what's going on and what steps we need to take to remedy certain situations. So we will be able to expand the broadcast. All of them will be happening there. We'll also have the classes where people can come sit down and have classes on a regular basis. We'll be able to expand those classes. Up until this point, in Chicago, we used to have weekly classes and so forth on different subjects. In D.C., we've had different things. We've had presentations where we've rented out places for presentations, teaching workshops, and so forth. But once we have the center, we will be able to have something on a regular basis, in the form of quarters, but they'll be actually based on the Afurakani cycle every 6 weeks, 6-week sections. From one Afurakani to the next Afurakani every 6 weeks, so there will be 6-week quote-unquote quarters, basically, with these different classes. We'll have the workshops, Oberima Afurakani Manhood, Sankofa Juma, where we train behavioral health professionals to incorporate culture in their therapeutic interventions with their clients based on our Nkwamua Whole Life Journal and our Afura Whole Life Interventions Therapeutic Model. Of course, we'll have our presentations whenever a new book comes out of different things. We have a presentation, speech, public speaking, and so forth. That will happen at the, lectures and so forth at the center. We'll have the Akuma Sa, Substance Abuse Abstinence Piece, Domestic Abuse Neutralization, Akuma Dan, Akuma Fra, Trauma Recovery Alignment, Overcoming Intergenerational Trauma, and then the publishing piece, the Nhoma Ejuma, the publishing arm will be at the center. So we'll have all the printers at the center and so forth will be publishing. And then this includes the employment opportunities for individuals in the community. So when we print, of course, we have to order supplies, of course. We printing process, cutting, putting the books together, shipping, dealing with all of that. So we have individuals engaged in the printing process, the shipping process, the ordering process, and everything else. So we can employ our people. At the same time, we also have the entrepreneurship piece, and that has already begun. So any one of you who would like to be a distributor, once again, on Nokwadefo, Nokwade means truth. So Nokwadefo is those people who dispense or disseminate Nokwade, truth. So this is our term for distributors. Instead of saying book distributors, we say Nokwadefo, because you are disseminating truth to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. So you can go to the website and you can see, watch the short video about becoming Nokwarefo and read the Nokwarefo distributor information document showing the wholesale price that you purchase the books at, 30% off, and then you sell them retail. So, for example, the book, the Okra Complex, the Solo Bakampo is $10. You would purchase it for $7, and then, of course, you would sell it for $10. So every book you would make $3 per book. If you had 10 people at your job and they all liked the book and wanted to, pulled out a $10 bill and gave it to you, you make $30 in a day just by disseminating accurate information that actually helps our people. We've had individuals who, just from listening to the Kuku Tuntum once, reading the book once, or just listening to the Kuku Tuntum, they stopped smoking marijuana, stopped drinking, and so forth, changed the relationship they have with their significant other, their spouse, their children, with themselves. They stop engaging in self-destructive behavior because now they want to focus on getting in harmony with divine order, as we talk about in the Kuku Tuntum, aligning every thought, intention, and action with divine order, recognizing they actually have a function in creation. As a cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, we have a specific function as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. This is something we never knew. We think we're just here. But once you recognize you actually have a function, you have a purpose in life, a life focus, now you're naturally inclined to move towards operating in that fashion. So when that is introduced in a detailed fashion, through books like the Kuku Tuntum or the audio and so forth, people begin to transform their lives. They leave Christianity, Islam, and all the other nonsense alone. They stop engaging in self-destructive practices dietarily as well as socially, and begin to transform their lives. So when you disseminate that kind of information, you're not only generating income for yourself, but you're bettering the community at the same time. So all those different things will be happening at the center. So since our business is the business of the week, we're focusing on that aspect of the business, the establishing of the center. Right now, when you look at the GoFundMe page for our AKONGUASUA DAN institution, we are at 5% of our fundraising goal. So again, any donation is welcome. Any donation of $15 or more, you will receive one or more of our soft cover books. Just make sure that when you make the donation, send us an email or a note saying which of the books that you would like to receive. So you can make a donation via the GoFundMe page, a link on our page, or you can go to the publications page, the Homa page on our website, and you can either make a purchase of the books. Of course, any purchase assists us not only with continuing to publish the books, but also we set aside some of those funds to help with the funding for the center as well. So whether you make a purchase there, you can also make a donation via PayPal on the Homa page, or you can make a donation via the GoFundMe page. Some people like GoFundMe. They'd rather make a donation there. But GoFundMe does not accept PayPal. They have their own system called WePay or something like that, so they don't deal with PayPal. So if you'd like to make a donation via PayPal, you can go to our publications page. We have a PayPal donation button there, as well as the regular buttons for making purchases of the book. So, again, this is this week for our institution. Next, and that's up until Saturday, and then starting on Sunday, it'll be week 3. And then we go to the next business, and we will be targeting the Hemisphere Productions owned by Dr. EGUA. So again, every week there's a new business that we are targeting, and all of them you will find on the page. All of them you can listen to the broadcast archives of individuals who came on the show and talked about their businesses and what they do and what their philosophy is and how they approach serving the community rooted in our ancestral religious values. Get all that information, and then you have the links on the page directly to their website so you can make a contribution. We want to target each individual business on a weekly basis. Of course, you're not restricted. If you would like to donate to more than one business at a time, if you'd like to donate to the natural health business or donate to the homeschool collective business or the Just Right technology owned by our brother Baba Jason Thigpen, he's on there as well, or the brother with the clothing Pan-African designs. of course, you can make a contribution to more than one business at a time or on a weekly basis. If you want to make a $5 contribution to 3 or 4 of them at once, you can do that. But we did want to also at the same time have that focus of one business per week where the majority of the funds go to. If you would like to donate to other businesses as well, that's fine, or just access their services because of they're all product services and, you know, institutions and so forth. You can do that as well, but we did want to get to that point where, you know, one business, we starve the beast from the white Narrow Springs, starve those white beasts, take those funds that we're spending. If you get a cup of coffee from McDonald's with cream and sugar and everything, or, you know, something else from McDonald's and you know it's really not the best thing for you, but you rush in there and get that, you do that a few days in a row, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to go there and do that. I'm going to purchase some natural apple juice and some ginger and grate that and heat that up, make that my hot drink in the morning. That will help cleanse you out, by the way. It gives you nutrients from the natural apple juice and from the ginger. It also cleanses you out. Ginger is also an anti-inflammatory. So you just grate like a piece of ginger that's the same diameter of like a quarter or something like that. Grate the ginger, heat up the apple juice, put it in there, strain it, put it in a mug, and you can take that to work. It will cleanse you out. You'll have energy. It'll help clear your, you know, mucus if you have that, cleanse out your organs and so forth. You'll be more vibrant, but then you're also saving money, and the money you save that you would have spent on coffee at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or at Starbucks, spending $3 or $4 or $5 on a cup of coffee at Starbucks, instead of wasting that money, you can spend a fraction of that, get that ginger and apple juice, and then the other funds, starve the beast and reallocate those funds to the business of the week. And then if we have enough people doing that, who join the pages and so forth, we can have one business receiving $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 in the course of a week. If they haven't been able to get capital, you know, funding from a black bank or even a white bank or any other source, private funding, you know, sources, and they want to keep their business open, then they don't have to be concerned about going through all that red tape. We just take the money from the white Narrow Spring, give it to a black business. Because if you don't do that, if you give the money to the white business anyway, just by default, you're supporting their business, supporting their children, supporting them purchasing a house, purchasing a car, putting their children in private schools and so forth. Every time we don't spend money with black businesses, we are by default supporting our enemy. So we need to be focused, make that assessment. As we said previously, we're in areas, whether we are in Chicago or in D.C. When you come to a city, we often find out, okay, where's the black businesses? Where are the black bookstores? Where are the black clothing stores? Where are the black-owned vegan restaurants and so forth? And when we find out where these things are, where do we get the shea butter from? Where do we get our, you know, incense from or whatever? Where do we get our herbs from? Whether it's natural herbs, golden seal, or things like that, whatever it is, we'll find out where those places are, and this is where we're patronized. If we on the other side of town and the vegan restaurant is all the way across town, we will drive by, go out of our way, past all the other white restaurants, Chinese food places, McDonald's, Burger King, or whatever it is. We'll go by all of that and go out of our way to go to the black-owned vegan restaurant, because if we do not, if we just go buy the shea butter from Whole Foods or something, because now they carry shea butter, then you're giving them $5, or they'll charge you much more. They'll probably charge you $10 for the same thing you can purchase for $8 or $7 at the black bookstore or black health food store. And you're either going to give the $7 or $8 that week to Whole Foods for shea butter and support them, or you're going to take that $7 and give it to the black business. So we have to make those assessments. You're either going to give the $7 or $10 twice in the course of a week on Thursday and Friday at Starbucks, or caramel macchiato, you know, Thursday and Friday, or you're going to say, I'm not going to give them that money, I'm going to give that $10 to the business of the week. We need to make those assessments. So, okay, so it's only 9 minutes, or actually 8.5 minutes left in the broadcast. So I'm just going through the chat room real quick to make sure we didn't miss any comments. And it looks like we don't have any other messages on the phone line. So we're going to put that link back up in the chat room. And I want to make sure I didn't put the link up for the page on Facebook, so I want to put that link up real quick. We created the page. It's only been up for about a week on Facebook, so we have a separate page on Facebook for the AKONG Economic Development Model. So we want to put that up real quick. We are Afuraitkaitnit on Facebook. And then one of our pages is AKONG Economic Development Model. Please like the page, but then also share the page. And when you share the page, we should have thousands of people on the page. It should be turned into a movement. AKONG Economic Development Model, the AKONG approach to reallocating funds, starving the beast, and feeding the pride, taking the funds from the whites and offspring and reallocating them to our people. That this is not just a one-time thing. This is ongoing, 52 businesses over the course of 52 weeks, and we're going to continue that year after year after year. And, of course, at some point there will be even more. Instead of one business a week, there'll probably be 10 businesses a week or whatever. But we need to move in that direction based on what we have learned since we have been here and what we need. We need to move in that direction. So we should have thousands of people who like the page and then share the page and get a list of black businesses that they can support. Every time you need a product or you need a service, the first thing you think, once we get back involved in our culture, the first thing we think is there an Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution that can satisfy this need? And if it is, then we find out where it is and we check them out. If there is not, and we're forced to go in another direction, then we have to go in another direction. But the first thing should be, if you're hungry and you want some food, you want some vegan food, the first thing you think about is there a black restaurant in the area that I can patronize, even if I have to drive out of my way? If there's, you need some natural soaps, natural hair care products, natural lotions or whatever, natural foods, healing products and so forth, whatever it is, clothing, anything it is, or even services, legal services, going to a physician, whatever it is, we should always be looking for our people first to focus on transferring those dollars to our people. So we should have thousands of people linked to the page. Once people get on that movement and begin to move in that direction and share the page and so forth, we'll be able to capitalize, fund our own businesses, our people. So we're not just talking about, everybody agrees. If you get on Facebook and put out a note that says, black people need to support black businesses, everybody will click like and say, yes, that's true. But obviously that's not really happening. People got a little bit excited when they were talking about a boycott for Thanksgiving, thanks-taking, misgiving. In reality, that shouldn't be a boycott. That should just be permanent. We shouldn't be participating in that nonsense anyway. We shouldn't be participating in fictional holidays that have no basis in reality. Jesus never existed. Yeshua never existed. We shouldn't be participating. We shouldn't be engaged in gift-giving and all other nonsense that has nothing to do with us. It's all just a means by which the whites and offspring steal money from our people and direct it right into their coffers on a yearly basis. So that should be a permanent thing. Some people got a little bit excited about that, a couple of months ago, but then things died down. We should be focused on this on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Every time you take money out of your pocket, if you can spend it to receive a product or a service that you need from an Afuraitkaitnit business, that's what you want to look at first. If not, then you're forced to go in the other direction. At least you investigate it first. So this is why we want people to like the page, the AKONG Economic Development page on Facebook, and share that. And we post the videos, we post the broadcasts, we post the document, economic development document, model document, AKONG, and the link to the page where you can see all the different businesses and so forth. So all of the information is there. If you have any questions for us, just hit us up on. You can hit us up on Facebook, Afuraitkaitnit. You can also friend us on Facebook, but follow. We also have an Convo Nanasom group on Facebook. We are Ojirafo on Twitter, Ojirafo on YouTube. So follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. That way, every time a new video comes out, you'll automatically be notified. Follow us on Blog Talk Radio on our channel. In the upper left-hand part of the page, it says follow this broadcast. When you do that, then you're automatically on the list so that when we have broadcasts coming up or messages coming out, we send a mass email out to everyone, and then you can connect with us on the list. We also have our own, for people who weren't on the broadcast earlier, we have our own social media network, which is separate from Facebook and the other social media networks. It's privately owned. It's on the Ning platform, Afuraitkaitnit.ning.com. And the link to that is on our regular ojirafo.com page, so you can find the link there. You can go directly there. And it's a social network. It's very similar to Facebook. It's on the Ning platform. You create a profile, and we post videos, we post blogs, we post discussions. People network from around the world, all of our people who are studying this kind of information, exchanging information, learning different things, posting information that's, helpful in events, things that are coming up, new information, news, whatever it is. So we can interact like that and build that, people building a greater understanding of Afurakani and special person. Okay, so we actually only have 90 seconds left in the broadcast, so we're going to end it here. But if you had a question or a comment, just email us through the ojirafo.com page, ODWIRAF as in free, O.com, ODWIRAF as in free, O.com, and, you can connect with us that way. Any question you have, just send us an email. And again, we thank individuals who have purchased the books recently and in the past as well, supported the organization. We have a few more days this week as the business of the week, so please support our AKONGUASUA DAN institution. You can go to the page and check it out if you like what you see and you see the value in the work. Please support our GoFundMe campaign or make a purchase, any $15 purchase or more. You receive a book, one or more books. Any donation of $15 or more, you receive one or more books. So, again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning in, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again.